Good morning. My name is Jacob Phillips, and welcome to my senior project. Today I will be talking about the evolution of sports media. But first, a little bit about me to understand why I'm so passionate about sports media. I started watching sports around 10 years ago when I was in the 3rd grade, and I fell in love instantly. Growing up, I would stay up late watching anything I could find that has to do with football, especially the history of sports. I love to learn the super niche stories of the past. Now it is something that I would like to pursue in my career. I'll be attending Franklin Pierce with a major in sports media next year. My mentor is Cam Tabor. He is the athletic director here at WLC and the coach of our basketball team. He also graduated from Florida Central College. He was a huge help in my senior project by peer reviewing my writing and was at all the men's league games. Not for me, of course, he played in the league. I chose him because he motivated me and my team, and we won actually half as much games as last year. So he's a great motivator, and he motivated me to finish this senior project yesterday. My outside expert, who couldn't be here today, he was busy taking pictures, is Ben Conan. He is a sports writer and photographer for the Monadnock Ledger. He was 2022 National Sports Media Association Sports Writer of the Year. He served as a mold for how I should be writing about sports. So the sub-special questions that I will be answering throughout the timeline is 1, what did the beginning of sports media look like? 2, what did the golden age of sports media look like? And 3, what was the state of sports media at this very moment? So the first one, for the earliest era in the history of sports media, I will be answering my first sub-essential question, what does the beginning of sports media look like? In 1733, the first ever recorded piece of sports media was featured in an American newspaper called the Boston Gazette, which was distributed throughout the northern colonies. The article featured a boxing match between John Falconer from Brentford and Bob Roussel out of Paddington. The reason why it was written about was because it was using local rules, and the winner would get prize money, which was unusual for the colonies because of the economy. In 1819, American Farmer magazine was released, written by John S. Skinner. It was titled Breeding and Racing the Maryland Blood Horse. It was the first magazine dedicated solely to sports, and in the following 16 years, only 6 more would release, and they would all cover horse racing, because it was really the only popular sport at the time, apart from bare-knuckle boxing. In the early 1800s especially, people were only writing about sports when there was more to the event than just the sport itself. For example, a boxing match between an American boxer and a British boxer would get more coverage, and actually the only thing that would be getting coverage in this time. That's something that has carried over to today, as you see Boston-New York rivalries to this day, because of the close proximity and the cultures in both those cities. In 1830, journalism was largely inaccessible due to the remaining largely unmarketed because of the lack of technology to distribute the newspapers, and only being accessible to the upper class because of the expensiveness of newspapers at the time. There was still lots of content being put out though. American Turf Register started being published, as well as Spirit of the Times magazine. These magazines were created solely for the upper class rich people of North America. In 1920, legends of the game today began to start playing professionally. Baseball started to become very popular with the likes of Babe Ruth playing in this era, as well as hockey legends like Hobie Baker and Georgie Zvezda, giving a lot for sports writers to talk about in this era. In September 1933, the penny press was invented by Benjamin Day of the Sun magazine, one of the earliest magazines in North American history. This would start the beginning of the dominance of the newspaper, because that made creating and distributing newspapers much cheaper than before, which increased the amount of people who could now afford newspapers. Sun magazine actually still writes today. Post-World War II America saw the rise of box scores and game scores getting published regularly in newspapers, as newspapers reached the height of their popularity due to the economic boom seen after the war. The next subessential question that this next slides will be answering is, what did the golden age of sports media look like? September 7th, 1979, at 7 p.m., the first ESPN broadcast was aired. It kicked off the golden age of sports media. They aired a show called Sports Center, which is still around today, where they had anchor Lee Leonard proudly announce the first words ever uttered on the iconic sports network. If you are a fan, what you will see in the next minutes, hours, and days may convince you that you have gone to sports heaven. In 1983, ESPN struck a deal with the NBA to be able to broadcast NBA games. It seemingly came at a perfect time, with ESPN running out of money, and saved the ESPN network by giving them a chance to air nationally televised games of basketball, which was a sport that was on the rise thanks to the likes of Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Magic Johnson. In the 1980s, the man who popularized basketball got drafted into the Bulls, Michael Jordan, as well as many other athletes that popularized their respective sports. Also helped popularize the sports journalism business. Joe Montana of the 49ers and Wayne Gretzky of the Oilers, just to name a few, gave sports journalists a lot to write about. The interest as a whole in sports was on the rise. Athletes were turning into pop culture stars and celebrities, thanks to sports journalism. Professional sports started to become more complex than ever, and there started to become a market for people that wanted to talk about the nuances of the game. New statistics were developed, like sacks in football, for those sports writers that were talking about those. Backwards.
It's stuck to the table.
Underneath the table.
Yeah.
Should get extra points for that.
In 1993, ESPN was in its prime, as personalities like Stuart Scott, Dan Patrick, and Chris Berman were all at ESPN. The sports media entertainment world was more accessible than ever. The content coming from ESPN at this time was highly entertaining and had many iconic features like Sports Center, of course. The focus for sports media was shifting from informational to entertainment. Those characters of ESPNs are staples of many 80s and 90s babies' childhoods. If you were a fan of sports throughout the 90s, then these names will undoubtedly be recognizable. In 1997, social media was invented. This would kick off the modern era of sports media. With the creation of social media at the beginning of the end, a huge market for newspapers as a whole, because anything that can be in paper can just now be online. Anyone can go online and write about sports, giving a lot of creative people a platform for their own media. The last subessential question that this last era will answer is, what is the state of sports media now? In 2004, the first sports podcast was created by Sam Coote. It was called The Sports Pod, and it did big numbers in the beginning. By 2006, it was getting over 500,000 downloads a month, and it ushered in the era of high popularity of sports podcasts. There's now over 10,000 sports-related podcasts, according to LinkedIn.com. In 2006, YouTube was created, and now anyone could make their own sports shows and videos, having to follow guidelines or get tied up in contracts. In 2007, Bill Simmons started the BS podcast. It was massive immediately as he started the popular style of sports media that is called rage bait, where you can say something you might not necessarily agree with or something that is clearly biased to initiate clicks and publicity. Bill Simmons does this the best, but some other known examples is Skip Bayless or Mad Dog Russo. In 2014, John Boyce, a writer for Secret Base, started to create his own web documentaries, which he had a very unique style of journalism. He created speculative fiction, which combines it with visuals backed by an interesting instrumental that relates to the story that he is telling. Stories like 17,776 is a national magazine award winner. He goes over what football will look like in the year 17,776. He also created a popular term in sports media world called scoregami, which is when you find a score that has never been a final score in an NFL game before. He discovered that while finding every single score since 1922. In 2020, COVID played a huge part in athletes from all sports that were stuck inside and started streaming, creating content, and starting podcasts due to the extra time. Fans loved the new perspective from the players who were actively playing. This perspective has been labeled as new media by current NBA player Draymond Green and former NBA player JJ Redick, both of whom are at the forefront of the new era in sports media. Present-day sports media is sort of in a situation where it's seemingly stuck in between eras. ESPN is struggling more than they have in the past due to this, largely because of all the content you can find online that is either better or more coherent than what is being aired on ESPN currently. They have fallen into rage bait content with shows like First Take, where two old guys are screaming at each other, interrupted by constant commercial breaks and ad reads. With the rise of streaming services instead of cable, has a lot to do with the sports media on TV to sports media on social media. At this moment, sports media's leading figures are the professionals like Stephen A. Smith, who has become ESPN's leading figure, and Skip Bayless, who shifted to FS1 after being fired from ESPN, which is Fox Sports. These professionals are often paid on a yearly salary, meaning their loyalty lies with their company's bottom line, not actual sports analysis. As I mentioned before, this often results in content that is stale at its best and over-the-top cringy at its worst. There are incentives to say crazy things that are not always accurate so their companies can drive engagement and get more money as a result. But this also causes poor mental health for these athletes who are playing in these sports because they're just saying ridiculous things. The fans or journalists popular in this category are the likes of Bill Simmons and Dave Portman, each who use their unique perspective as fans or people entirely removed from their organizations such as ESPN or Fox Sports to create content that is more original and relatable. This content is viewed by most as being more authentic and organic, making it a popular choice by a growing number of sports viewers. This content, however, is not without bias, as the creators in this category are often fans of one team or a city, making their content at times seem as if they were favoring one team over another. However, with the wide variety of content, viewers have the option to find content that aligns with their team or their city, something that is not available in traditional shows. Finally, the news category of content is shows and podcasts that are created by players. Popular in this category are JJ Redick, Pat McAfee, LeBron James, Patrick Beverley, Jason and Travis Kelce, Jeff Teague, More and more current and former athletes are coming out with their own shows. This has led to a highly competitive market that is split up into two distinct categories. First, there is the comedy or laid-back style, popularized by Pat McAfee. This style of content led by former players delivers sports analysis that is not focused on the X and O's, rather than personalities and mindsets behind players and teams. Creators like McAfee use their connections as players to get high-level interviews with current players. Most notably, McAfee has accrued weekly interviews with Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, former Alabama head coach Nick Saban, and though unofficial at this time, there has been talks that WNBA star Clayton Clark is going to make regular appearances on his show, which has been moved to ESPN. This style of media lends itself well to short clips and social media posts due to its incredible easy-to-digest content and relatable insight into the minds of professional athletes. On the other side of the coin, there's more serious podcasts that are focused on diving into the X's and O's of a given game or event. Leading this category are JJ Redick and recently LeBron James, who have teamed up together to create a podcast. These two dive into plays and actions that can be seen in current NBA games, providing a perspective on events that only former high-level players could give. This is in distinct contrast to the former players that become very popular on ESPN shows like First Take, where they just argue points from the ESPN labels. JJ Redick has even gotten himself a role as color commentator on ABC's NBA playoff broadcasts. Overall, new sports media is filled with a variety of style and personality. This allows viewers to get a wide range of perspectives and viewpoints on the teams or sports that they are interested in. In addition, this new content is entirely free to consume, meaning that it is able to reach larger audiences and create a wider net of engagement for creators and advertisers. For my applied piece, I attended every game of the 2024 Wilton Men's League season and wrote a detailed summary of the Men's League playoffs, where Black team won the championship despite being down in all three playoff games. I have them here. He was on the white team. They were terrible. They got kicked out. But they weren't the worst team.
Way to be thrown under the bus.
Yellow was the worst team. But the three best teams in the league were Black team, which is the oldest team, led by forward Chris Jacob and guard Jack Schwab. Guard Danny Brunel, forward Travis Spalding. They led it with basketball intelligence and very great ball movement. They tended to hang in games all the way to the end, then dominate once the other team got tired. The next team, which was a 12-1 team, the blue team was a great team all year. They typically blew teams out, and they only lost one game all year. They dominated with the combination of shooting and size, with the tallest player in the league, James Cook, who was dominated all year in the paint. When Cook's three ball was working, he was outright unstoppable. He was impossible to contest from every level due to the lack of size in the league. Colton Salisbury was also a great player for Blue, as he shot the lights out all season. As you can see, James Cook here, he had 18 points, and Colton Salisbury had 20 points in that specific game. And finally, purple team. Purple team lived and died by the three, and it worked for them all year. Specifically, guard forward Jordan Hiscow shot the lights out all year. They also had a decent inside game, thanks to center Brad Coates, who played a lot like Nikola Jokic. He saw the floor very well and could score from any level, and was great for his teammates. He wore his heart on his sleeve during games, which took him out of games mentally at times, but he is a tremendous passer, even when he is flustered in those games. As you can see here, Brad had 15 points, Jordan had 16 points. Thank you for watching my senior project. Any questions?
I got a question. What is your dream job? Like, what station would you work at in the future if you had
My dream job wouldn't be probably working at an ESPN station or something like that. I would like to have my own, get to create my own thoughts in mind and have probably working at Secret Base, SB Nation, which is where John Boyce works, where you can make your own things, you can kind of be free.
You play in men's league next year. You help
Absolutely.
out Tabor's team.
Absolutely, I'm
They
playing.
can
men's
recruit
league.
the both of us possibly.
Yep.
What's your favorite sport to watch in life?
My favorite sport to watch is football, probably. I like how deep the game goes, and that's mainly what I looked at when I was looking at the history of sports. Harry?
What journalist are you most inspired by?
John Boyce. He is super creative in how he talks about the game. It's not always about specifically the product from the game. It's a lot of the inside stats, like the Bob emergency, I like to bring up a lot, where he finds every single Bob that has played in any single sport and breaks them down. Lexi?
Who would you say that your favorite athlete is of all time?
My favorite athlete of all time? Probably like Tom Brady or something. It's basic, but he's the greatest quarterback of all time. So,
Not Vince Carter.
could be Vince.
Air Canada.
Kyle Duggar.
Kyle Duggar.
Mr. Weaver?
Hey, as an aspiring sports analyst, how would you describe the Boston Celtics' first game in the Eastern Conference Finals? Which I attended, by the way.
Oh wow, you're all.
Yeah, a couple heart attacks, a couple of fights with Indiana players.
You're saying we pay you too much. Stop bragging.
I love that game.
What do you think about
game
that
is
game?
Exactly what you look for in playoff basketball. It wasn't always a problem with basketball. Is a lot of people say you could just watch the last 5 minutes and catch the whole game. But that whole game felt like the last 5 minutes of the game. It was constantly back and forth. We would go up 12 points, and then the Pacers would fight back. Pacers only led in the fourth quarter in that game, and yet they almost beat us. But
And what do you think the Celtics should do tonight to make sure that they come out with a win?
if I were them,
In your analysis.
if I were them, I would definitely have Drew Holiday be the focal point of the game. Drew Holiday had a great game. He had 28 points. He shut down Tyrese Halliburton in the last 5 minutes of the game. He did everything you needed that's why we traded for him, is to make plays defensively and do what Marcus Smart couldn't do offensively. So, that's facts. Mr. Tabor?
I have two questions. One, what role do you think the officiating had in Black Team winning the championship?
It played a huge role. I'm actually going to tell a story. In the last 5 minutes of the championship game, actually no, it was like the last minute. The black team hit the orange team hit a three to bring the game within 4, and Mark Basha was right there calling timeout. They had no timeouts, which if you pay attention to basketball, according to the rule book on the site, it means that
You get it there.
that's a technical foul. Orange team gets 2 shots at the free throw line and possession of the ball, making that a potential 5-point swing. They could have won the game, but since black team runs the league,
It is true.
There it is.
It is true.
And there's the drama.
And you're wearing black.
I know.
My more serious question that actually has to do with your project is, what impact do you think streaming services like Amazon Prime or HBO Max are having on the sports media world? For example, with the NFL playoff games only being available on Peacock or Prime, do you think that's a positive or a negative?
I think part of it is positive because it's creating more people, more fans. If someone like my mom who has an Amazon subscription, who wouldn't normally watch those football games, maybe she goes on Amazon on a Sunday night and she's, oh, there's a football game, I'll throw that on.
I pick
But
that
on the
over
flip side,
anything else.
if you're a fan of the game and you want to watch the Patriots play a team and they're on Amazon that night, you don't have Amazon, well, now you have to pay more. And if you're a fan of football, that means that you are going to be paying more. And it's actually kind of interesting. The Carolina Panthers this year, it will cost more money to actually get all the subscriptions to watch all 16 games than it would if you bought tickets to each of their games.
That is
Okay, I have like just a quick story. When you were a freshman and you and Tyler Gill and someone else was in my study, all you would talk about is fantasy football.
definitely us three.
I didn't know you. I don't think it was you, but it was like literally
I had every class with these kids.
It was all you talked about, and so I'm glad you picked something. My other question is Dave Portnoy. 1, Miss Peaches.
Yes.
Yes, Miss Peaches.
All right. 2, like he's a local dude that
Yeah.
does all this. Is
Yeah.
that something that you would look to do and come back to your roots?
Yes, well, first and foremost, I do want to come back here, specifically and coach a team.
Nice.
But also, yeah, I would want to write about the Patriots. I would want to write about the Red Sox and the Bruins, mainly because that's what I know most of the history of, and that's what interests me most. But if I had to write for something else, it would be about
So I was going to ask about hockey.
Okay.
I'm a hockey person, but never so thank you for just Secondly, I'm curious how you work with Ben Conan.
Ben Conan?
Yeah.
I've known Ben Conan since I was a freshman. He was a photographer at most of the games not most of them, but a lot of the games that I played in. He actually also plays in the men's league.
Okay.
His team was also awful, if you're wondering. White team did beat them.
I got you. So you guys kind of have a history. So
Yeah.
it's an easy person to
Right. He wasn't my first choice. He actually wasn't even my second choice. At first, I reached out to John Boyce, but he didn't get back to me. And then I reached out to this other guy, Kofi Yaboya, who also is a writer at Secret Base. But I ended up going with Ben Conan because he is a well-renowned writer in New Hampshire. So. Oh, sorry, Dennis.
So with the, what I consider to be the overload of access to sports media, you can watch multiple people and multiple channels. What are you going to bring different to the table that's going to make me watch you?
Well, what I would bring differently to the table is I would be talking about niche things. Like, for instance, I really like the fact of John Fulconer and Bob Roussel, that they were the first sports media ever written. I tried to find more on that, but there was only one or two sources talking about it. One was a very long, seemingly timeline from the 1400s all the way to the 1800s about mixed martial arts. And there was a little nugget of them talking about John Fulconer and Bob Roussel. And then another one was actually where I found that, and I just looked up what was the first piece of sports media.
Anybody else?
Good question.
Mom?
When you have your own media show, are you going to be regularly putting players on blast like you did with Mr. Tabor and Mr. Conan?
No, I kind of condemn that because of the effect that it can have on players' head. There was a little more that I wanted to add into this presentation that had to do with the effect of sports media on players' psyche. There's a lot of players that have mental issues nowadays, and they're more outspoken about it. And it was probably around the whole time, but they're coming out about it more. You're seeing it more because of how hard these sports journalists are on these players. Like someone like Kyrie Irving, for example. Everyone was on Kyrie Irving for anything that he did, whether it was leaving the Boston Celtics because he didn't like the Boston Celtics, or walking around with the with the smoke thing around the stadium. Whether it was weird or not, that is his belief, and he can do as he wants with that. So, yeah.
All right, great job.